I could still hear the drumbeats, even though the village was empty. When I was younger, my father worked as a doctor in a remote village in Eastern Africa. It was far from any city or town, and the only way to get there was by traveling through long stretches of dense forest. The village was small, maybe 50 people in total, but they were kind enough when we first arrived. Still, there was an unspoken tension. People whispered, glanced over their shoulders as if they were always waiting for something. I noticed it early on, but my father didn't. He was focused on his work. The villagers respected him because he saved lives, and they brought him gifts every day: chickens, fruit, handmade carvings. Yet, they never stayed to chat. They seemed to always be in a hurry to get home before nightfall. One evening, just after sunset, there was a knock at the door. It was the village elders. Their faces looked serious, almost scared, which was strange because I had never seen fear in their eyes before. They told my father there was a sick child at the edge of the village who needed help immediately. They insisted we come right away. We followed them to a small hut at the very end of the village. Inside, a young boy was lying on the floor, eyes wide open, but not moving at all. His chest barely rose with each breath. He couldn't speak, couldn't blink, but his eyes were fixed on me, even though he didn't seem to recognize anyone. The elders said he had wandered too deep into the forest earlier that day. They were vague about what happened, only saying he came back different. My father tried to examine him, but there was nothing physically wrong. No fever, no wounds. The boy's pulse was weak, but steady. Yet he was completely unresponsive, just staring into space, as if trapped inside his own head. It was unsettling. I stood in the corner, trying to avoid the boy's gaze, but no matter where I moved, his eyes seemed to follow me. The elders pulled my father aside, lowering their voices. I could hear bits and pieces of the conversation. Something about an old ritual. Something about the forest taking him. My father asked what they meant, but they avoided giving any real answers. They told us to leave it alone and keep the boy in the hut for the night. That night, the drums started. It was distant at first, just a faint thumping that could have been mistaken for the wind. But as the night went on, it grew louder. It wasn't the usual sound of the drums we heard during village ceremonies. This was something different, something slow and ominous. It came from deep within the forest, almost like a heartbeat, steady and slow. I couldn't sleep. The drumbeats were too unsettling, and each time I thought I'd drift off, a loud thud would snap me back to full awareness. I tried asking my father about it, but he told me not to worry. He was sure it was just part of some ritual. But I knew something wasn't right. The villagers didn't play drums at night, especially not like this. The next morning, the village was dead silent. It was strange. Normally there were people outside by dawn, preparing for the day. But this morning, no one. Not even the usual chatter of chickens or goats. We headed to the boy's hut, but when we arrived, he was gone. The mat where he had been lying was cold, and there were muddy footprints leading out of the hut toward the forest. The elders were nowhere to be found. The whole village felt off. My father and I walked around, calling out to people, but it was like everyone had just disappeared overnight. We waited a while, unsure what to do. But the drums, those drums from last night, they started again. Louder now, as if they were moving closer. My father, concerned, told me to stay in the house while he went to look for answers. He said it would be safer if I stayed put. But after hours of waiting and hearing nothing, I couldn't just sit there. I had to know what was happening. I followed the muddy footprints into the forest, hoping to find the boy or at least some clue of where the villagers had gone. The deeper I walked into the trees, the louder the drums became. It was almost deafening, pounding in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I called out for my father, for anyone, but no one answered. Just the drums. That's when I saw them, dark figures standing between the trees, their bodies barely visible in the dim light. I couldn't make out their faces, but their eyes glowed faintly, watching me, tracking my every move. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I wasn't alone, and whoever, or whatever, was out there was waiting for something. Suddenly, the drums stopped. The silence was even more terrifying than the noise. I looked around, And that's when I saw him, the boy, standing in front of me. He was just there. His clothes were covered in mud, his skin pale, and his eyes, those same wide, empty eyes I had seen the night before. He stared at me, not moving, just smiling. But it wasn't a normal smile. It stretched too wide, too unnatural, like his face didn't know how to smile properly. I wanted to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat. The boy stepped closer, his smile growing wider, and for the first time, he spoke. But his voice wasn't his. It was deeper, older, and it echoed around the forest like it was coming from everywhere at once. "He's waiting," the boy whispered. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, not daring to look back. The branches tore at my skin, the roots tripped me up, but I didn't stop until I burst out of the forest and back into the village. Except, it wasn't the same village. The huts were abandoned, overgrown with vines as if no one had lived there for years. It was like the entire village had been swallowed by the forest overnight, leaving nothing but an eerie emptiness. My father never came back. I searched for days, but it was like he had disappeared, just like the villagers. The authorities eventually found me, wandering alone near the edge of the forest, dazed and confused. No one believed my story. They said the village had been abandoned long ago, that no one had lived there for years. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I still hear those drums. And if I listen long enough, I see the boy's face in the dark, smiling. So, what do you think? What happened to the boy? Why did the village vanish? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. There's more out there waiting to be uncovered.